Hey there, it's Wendy from Worldwide Speak, and I'm back to talk to you today about the structural overview of a comparison and contrast essay. This video is geared for the English language learner who's just beginning to write essays in English. And the comparison essay, the comparison and contrast essay, is something that's used all the time in academic writing. So this video is to get you started with a strong foundation in the structure of how to write one. So, are you ready? Let's learn. Okay, so when we're writing this comparison and contrast essay, there are a couple different ways we can do this. This video is going to focus on one method, and then I'll have another video on the other method. But I just want to let you know what the two are to start off. There's the block method, and then there's the point-by-point method. And if you can see that image right below me, it's called a Venn diagram. And we love, as teachers, we love to use this to compare and contrast. The two circles overlap with the segment in the middle, or the part in the middle, showing what the two things have in common. And then the outsides of the circle are what's different about the two things. So keeping that in mind, in this Venn diagram, we're comparing oranges and apples. And in the block method, you have two body paragraphs. That's it, just two. And the first body paragraph just talks about one subject, which in this case would be the orange. And the second body paragraph would talk about just one subject in reference to the first subject, and that would be, in this case, the apple. So in the block, each paragraph talks about one thing or focuses on one aspect. In the point by point, it's a little bit different. You'll have more body paragraphs, probably 3 or 4, 5, who knows, depending on how long your essay is. But in the point by point, you're going to talk about both subjects in each paragraph. I'll go into that in much more detail in my other video on point by point, but just so you have an idea of the two types of structures that we can use to write the comparison and contrast essay. That being said, the block method, in my opinion, is a little bit easier to write. It's for shorter essays. It's great to begin with because you know they're just two body paragraphs and they're very contained and they just focus on one thing. The point by point, on the other hand, again, in my opinion, make things a little more interesting for the reader and cause them to think a little more deeply about a topic. But again, that's just my opinion. Although typically we'll start out with the block method. All right, like I said, I want to talk to you in this video about the block method. And this method of writing, this structure, the writer compares their subjects in just two body paragraphs. That's all you're going to have. And what exactly does the entire essay look like? Remember, an essay is writing made up of multiple paragraphs. So we will start with an introduction paragraph. We will have the first body paragraph talking about subject A. Remember the previous slide? In our example with that Venn diagram, we talked about the orange. The orange was subject A. And then the next body paragraph will be talking about subject B, which is the other thing that, we're comparing two things. So in this example, in this video, it would be the apple. And then it would reference back to the orange to compare the two. And lastly, we would have a conclusion paragraph. So in total, you're going to have 4 paragraphs in this block method, and that's really nice to know when you begin writing essays because it's a shorter form and it's very controlled in what you put into the paragraphs. So you have an intro. Body paragraph 1 focuses on one subject. Body paragraph 2 focuses on another, and then you wrap it up with a conclusion paragraph. So that's 4 paragraphs in total. So you can see, like this image here, each paragraph is only focusing on one thing. And that's what makes this block method so great to start out with, because you have a very simple, organized, contained structure. All right, let's talk about the introduction paragraph for just a moment. The introduction paragraph includes a hook. That's where you grab your reader's attention and say, hey, you're going to want to read my paper. It's super interesting, right? And then you're going to give some background information about the 2 subjects you're writing about. In our case, in this video, the oranges and the apples. And then lastly, your last sentence is going to be a super strong thesis statement. And how do you make it strong? Well, you mention the 2 subjects, and then you have to make sure to let the reader know your focus. Remember, you need to let them know if you're going to talk about similarities, if you're going to talk about differences, or if you're going to talk about both. Because if you don't let your reader know this, they're going to be super confused, and they're going to have to slow down when reading your paper or your essay, or they're just going to stop reading it altogether. So remember, you need a super strong thesis that's very clear and focused. Now, let me give you some thesis examples for similarities, differences, and both. That should give you a better idea of what these strong thesis statements look like. So let's say I wanted to write one about similarities. I could say something like, as longtime favorites, it's easy to see how similar these 2 fruits are. And you see that I use the word similar. So that signals to your reader, hey, I'm going to read an essay about similarities between apples and oranges. And then let's say we want to have an essay that focuses on our differences. Well, not our differences, the differences between the apples and the oranges. We could write something like this. Oranges and apples are both fruits, yet they differ in a lot of ways. You see that I use that word yet to show a contrast, and I insert the word, or I put in the word, or I add the word differ. And that's the signal word for your reader, hey, this essay is going to focus on differences between oranges and apples. Now, lastly, what if I wanted to write a paper about similarities and differences, both of them? Well, I could write a thesis statement like this. Even though oranges and apples have many similarities, there are also quite a few differences. Well, how does this signal to the reader that I'm going to focus on both? First, I use the word similarities, and then I add the word also, showing the reader I'm going to add something here. And then I use the word differences. So I've got those key specific words in my thesis to show the reader, hey, I'm going to talk about how they're the same and how they're different. So there you have it, 3 different examples with 3 different focusing ideas. 1 on similarities, 1 on differences, and 1 on both. All right, so we know we have that Venn diagram with our oranges and our apples. Let's say we want to write our essay on the similarities between oranges and apples. Well, our body paragraph 1, which would be our subject A, the similarities, as you can see in the diagram below me, focus on the fact that they're both fruits, they both grow on trees, and they both give juice. So our first reason could be what type of food they are, because they're both fruits, where they both grow on trees, and what they provide. They both provide juice for us. Well, that paragraph is only going to be about the orange. Now, you guessed it, body paragraph 2 is going to talk about the same things, but it's going to be about the apple. And it's in body paragraph 2 that you're going to compare the apple back to the orange. The first body paragraph, you just talk about the orange. The second body paragraph, you talk about the apple in comparison to the orange. Now, what if we want to focus on the differences? That's those outside parts of the Venn diagram. Well, again, we're going to talk about subject A, which is our orange, but we're going to talk about the things on the outsides. We're going to have maybe the first reason is where they originated, and then what climate they grow in, and their appearance. Remember, first body paragraph, one focus, and that's your orange. That's your first subject. You're only talking about that. Now, body paragraph 2 is going to talk about the same things, the same reasons in the same order, as you see. We're talking about the apple, and we are going to talk about the apple and show how they're different than the oranges. So you need to note that in body paragraph number 2, you're talking about the apple, but you're then referencing back to subject A, or in our case, the orange, to show how they are different. Okay, so then what if you want to write about similarities and differences? This isn't maybe as common, but it's a really great way I have found in my classroom to begin writing a comparison and contrast essay. So in this one where we're talking about similarities and differences, our subject A actually becomes similarities, and our subject B becomes differences. So the first body paragraph is only going to focus on the similarities between the two subjects, and the second paragraph, body paragraph number 2, is only going to focus on their differences. So the reasons that they're similar, that they're fruit, they grow on trees, and they give juice, you'll talk about that in the first body paragraph. So you're going to be mentioning the orange and the apple in that first paragraph. But your focus is still only one thing. It's that they're similar. And then in your body paragraph 2, you're going to focus on where they originated, what climate they grow in, and their appearance. And again, you're going to mention both fruits, oranges and apples, but your focus of that paragraph is on one thing, and that's differences. So this is a little bit different than just focusing on similarities or differences. But in my opinion and in my classroom, I have found this is a great entry way into writing comparison and contrast, because the first body paragraph can talk about how they're the same, and then the second body paragraph can talk about how they're different. And of course, the choice is yours on which one you want to write and which one seems to be the easiest for you and make the most sense. Because when you start writing in English, you want to go with something that you completely understand so that your writing will be clear and effective. All right, and lastly, we've got our conclusion paragraph. And in this paragraph, you're just going to restate the thesis, and that you're going to show whether there were similarities or differences. And then you can restate the points of comparison or your reasons. Like in our case, we talked about where they grew, what they gave us, and what type of food they were. And then the last sentence, you can talk about an opinion or a realization that you had after you compared these two things. I want to give you some examples like I did with the introduction paragraph of thesis examples for each one. So if we had done an essay, on similarities, our restated thesis would look something like this. In sum, remember to use that transition word so the reader knows it's the end. Oranges and apples are obviously rather similar. I use the word similar, and that lets the reader know, it kind of wraps it up again. Oh, that's right, we were just talking about how they were similar. The next one, to conclude, it is clear that oranges and apples have many different qualities. I've just restated that there were differences between the two subjects, in our case, the oranges and the apples. And lastly, when we were talking about both, in short, when examining oranges and apples, there are some similarities as well as a variety of differences. So that expression as well as shows we have both similarities and differences. So those are the pieces that you need, the sentences that you need inside of your conclusion paragraph in order to have a strong conclusion paragraph. Okay, that's a lot of information about the block method, and the things I'd like you to really focus on and remember is to watch your order. Keep your points of comparison or your reasons in the same order in each paragraph. If I talk about where they originated in the first thing in my first paragraph, I have to talk about where they originated as the first thing in my second body paragraph. Also, it's really important to use the appropriate comparison transitions. I have an entire video on comparison and contrast transition words. You'll probably want to watch that as you're starting out so you can use them properly. So remember, we compare two things. We have this Venn diagram that helps us brainstorm and get our ideas down and know what is similar and what's different. We have the introduction paragraph. We have body paragraph 1 with subject 1. We have body paragraph 2 with subject 2. In our cases, it was the oranges and then the apples. And then we have the conclusion paragraph. Those are the pieces. That's the overall structure of the block method, comparison and contrast essay. All right, you made it to the end. Thank you so much for watching. We truly appreciate that you've come here to learn with us. If you need more information or you have questions about this block method or writing an essay in English, please drop me a note in the comments and I will for sure get back to you. As always, please remember to subscribe if you like this content, and we'll see you around. Take care. Bye-bye.